5 mechanisms to hurt to exercise control. We are all involved in various forms of power play. Perhaps this circumstance is best seen in the sphere of the couple. In itself, it is a natural form of struggle. But in this type of dispute, not all strategies are appropriate. There are a wide variety of mechanisms used to hurt in order to exert control and manipulate in the social sphere. Some are extremely explicit, such as to raise the voice. Others are more veiled. However, this does not necessarily mean that they are not equally aggressive and harmful. When faced with direct aggression, there is more clarity and the individual has more tools to respond. In fact, there is no ambiguity in these forms of violence. On the other hand, when covert means are used, the mechanism of wounding to exert control is usually more effective. There are several ways to check. Some may even be disguised as good deeds. They are usually more effective with insecure or dependent people, as these relationships tend to facilitate manipulation. It is important to learn to identify the mechanisms of wounding in order to exercise control to disable them and prevent them from achieving their goals. We will look at 5 of them. To hurt an opponent is to hurt oneself. Controlling aggression without inflicting harm is the art of peace. Morihei Ueshiba. 1. Passive-aggressive silence, hurt to exercise control. This is a mechanism that we can call a Cold War. It keeps the other person in suspense and feeds their insecurities. There is no shouting, no long words. In fact, it is a laconic form of communication where the other is answered with monosyllabic words, despite the fact that it is clear that the person in question needs a longer answer. This way of hurting in order to exercise control is done by the hurter, keeping silent about important topics that concern the other person. Consequently, they are not informed, or are only partially informed, always with the aim of creating some confusion. This kind of silence is passive-aggressive. Silence is a form of control and manipulation. 2. Blocking the dialogue to maintain the conflict. This mechanism is similar to the previous one, but not quite the same. This is a systematic blocking of the dialogue on specific topics. As a rule, the hurter prevents or sabotages the ability to process certain subjects. They are almost always associated with fouls on the part of the person who holds the power in the relationship. They can deviate from the central subject and stay only in the periphery. They may also react with obvious discomfort when certain topics are mentioned. This is likely to cause the other party to avoid such dialogues and thus the manipulator achieves his goal. 3. Belittling the other person. Mockery or ridicule are 2 ways in which the hurter can downplay the other person's abilities. They can ask them for credentials or references to back up everything they say. Ultimately, their goal is to denigrate them and disqualify what they say or do. This hurtful mechanism can also be used to attack the other person's weak points or mistakes. The hurter diverts the conversation towards unpleasant aspects, such as the other person's weaknesses or past mistakes. Their ultimate goal is to make the person feel insignificant. 4. Denial of self-responsibility, hurt to exercise control. This is another common mechanism that some use to exert control. The intention here is for the offending person to justify any mistakes that they have made. Their goal is not to admit their mistakes, as they would consider this an act that shows they are below the other person. Therefore, they may even lie to avoid any responsibility for a mistake. They can also undermine their mistake, even if it was serious. In fact, they will downplay it and may even accuse the other person of making it more important than it really is. Therefore, they end up talking about the faults of the other person who dared to question it. instead of admitting responsibility when a fault is pointed out. Attacking the other person over one's own faults is a way of hurting to exert control. 5. Accusations and criticism. This can be said to be the classic way to hurt to exercise control. It is also one of the most camouflaged. It involves shifting responsibility from one problem to another. "You make me angry," the hurter says to the other person, as if their feelings depend on the other person. The cycle ends with a variety of criticisms, perhaps not particularly intense or profound, but continuous and repetitive. They will look for a "but" for every action or word from the other person, creating the impression that they are always in the wrong. All of these are mechanisms of verbal manipulation. They are not explicitly violent and are often quite easily accepted in the relationship, the family, or at work. However, it is important to understand that this is psychological violence. Therefore, they require a good dose of assertiveness in response.